Next, I would like to invite on stage for the keynote presentation Mr. Ajay Verma, Global Practice Head, Sustainable Smart World L&T Technology Service Limited. Everyone, with the round of applause, please welcome Mr. Ajay Verma. Ajay has done his bachelor's in Mechanical Engineering BE from National Institute of Technology NIT Jamshedpur. Postgraduate Diploma in Management and Entrepreneurship, PGDME from Jawadhpur University, and General Management Principles for Building Effective Client Management from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, IIMA. He has authored a book on the digital era, Time to Reinvent the Target Operating Model, which is available on Amazon, Kindle, Flipkart, White Falcon Publishing Press, and has also published multiple thought leadership papers in Google Forum. Everyone, kindly please welcome your Mr. Ajay Verma. Over to you, sir.
So I'm assuming you all are having a good session, had a good session yesterday, and there were some key takeaways, right? And I know there were a lot of sessions lined up more on the smart meter, smart grid, IoT, and the analytics piece also on the same side, right? So I just thought I'll change it a little bit differently, and I'll talk about more in terms of how do we really look at a bigger picture from the whole transformations happening in the utilities industry, right? And that's the reason I changed this, the name of the topic, which is more around reinventing the operating model of the utilities industry, right? So how do we look into the overall picture and see what are the changes needs to be done in the current operating model, and how do we pull up the right levers to gear up for the future operating model, right? So with that, so what I'll do, the intent of this presentation is basically, as we all know, the utilities industry as overall is being disrupted, right? Not in the sense that, they are going through a lot of transformations. Their ratings are going down. They are struggling with the margin, right? And there is a lot of focus on how do we gear it up to not just sustain and drive the growth in the disruptive world, right? So with that context, I'll just start with, I'll quickly, walk through who we are, right? So again, I'm part of L&T Group, which is another 21 billion company. And we are operating in 50 plus countries. And we have close to 120K employees, right? And we are across, not just in technology, but also the infra, the defense, and many other sectors, right? So I'll just quickly walk through because of the time constraint. I have been given 15 minutes, so I think this is less, but I know a lot of speakers are lined up. So I'll be happy to have a deeper conversation after this session or anytime later. So again, as I said, we are part of L&T Technology, which is another independent listed company within the L&T Group, right? So we are operating in 20 plus countries. We have close to 21K employee. We are 1 billion in revenue. And we are across multiple sectors, manufacturing, automotive, and sustainability is one of the important strategic bet from the overall L&T technology perspective. As I said, from an L&T technology perspective, we have a very strong footprint in the energy domain, right? So we have, if you look at, we have close to 1350 strong professionals who are actually not just the IT guy, but the business guys. We are working across 25 plus customers. We have close to 50 plus SMEs and consultants. And proud to say that we have co-authored and patents close to 59 plus, right? We are across the value ecosystems, starting from conventional power to renewable energy, the power utilities and energy transformations. And we have built as a SI, as a service provider, what we do is basically when we work with any customers, we try to harvest in terms of the best practices and lessons learned, and so that we can actually take it to the other customers, right? So we have a lot of in-house solutions, starting from power electronics to IoT and M2M, data analytics, Fusion, which is a more kind of an IoT platform, which is ready-made solutions and IPs. And also a lot of use cases we have built in 5G. We have a private 5G in our lab in Chennai, where we have built some of the use cases around digital twins and those kind of use cases, AR, VR. So with that context, let me just go deep dive into what we really wanted to talk about when I say reinventing the operating model of the utilities, right? So if you look at from a high level, where this industry is going, right? So there are a lot of trends, right? And again, this is coming from Gartner and Forrester and IDC and markets, right? So there is a lot of focus on, as I said, the industry is being disrupted. Consumers are not just the consumers, but also becoming the prosumers, right? So they are having the solar panel. We need to have the net metering so that they can sell the electricity back to the grid. There is a lot of focus on electric vehicles, right? Electric vehicles, as we all know, it's going up. Whether the grid is enabled to support that kind of growth in the electric vehicles, I think we still need to introspect. There is again, when we talk about IoT and smart meter, it's all about data. And data is a new oil, we all say, but it's a commodity unless we create the right kind of insights and right kind of values out of the data. There is a lot of focus on energy transition, where utilities are also trying to become the net zero, right, to support the broader view of the country and the world. There is a lot of things happening in the wastewater treatment, and there is a lot of IoT-enabled utilities, which is more around how do we really monitor remotely and to come out from the field visit, right? And again, if I take an example, again, not from an India perspective, but if you look at many utilities in North America, any truck rollout costs them around $500 to start with. And many of these truck rollout is kind of not useful because they do not have all the information at the right place, right? So how do we really create that, the monitoring remotely and take the right action and visit the field when it is really needed, right? Whether it's a digital twin, asset monitoring, and how do we really increase the life cycle of an asset? Because as a utilities, it's all about, it's an asset-heavy industry. They are measured based on what assets they have. And how do we increase the life of an asset? Is that the challenge they are facing right now? Moving on, again, when I say we are from L&T Technology, we really look at a broader picture in terms of where the utilities future value chain, right? So if you look at from the blue ones, which talks about more in terms of the value chain from the generation to the transmission to the distribution to the retail. But if you look at the middle portion, which is the disruptions, that is where we are seeing a lot of disruptions are happening, right? Whether it's a virtual power plant, whether it's a DER, whether it's a distributed generation, whether it's a sustainable energy management, or e-vehicles, that is where we are seeing a lot of disruptions are happening, okay, in the utilities world. And that is where the transformation is needed. Now, if you look at the bottom one, which is where they are, I call it as a high-level battlefields, that is where they are trying to compete. How do I improve my revenue? How do I improve my margin, EBITDA? How do I leverage the digital levers to across the value chain to operate in a more efficient and effective way, right? How do we embrace the renewals, right? How do we focus more on grid operations and asset management? And customer experience, right? The customer experience, if you look at, and I always say, is one size fits all doesn't work now, right? We are working in a market where as a consumer, I have an option to decide. And again, not everywhere in India, but not everywhere in the world. But the whole idea is, the industry is going to move in a direction where I will have an option to decide who is going to be my utility service provider, right? So customer experience is going to matter a lot. One size fits all will not going to work, right? So just giving a high-level view of where this utilities future value chain is going at a broader sense, right? Now going to the next one, just building on the top of it, right? There is a adoption of digital technology to move from just a IT focus to the business focus, right? And what does it mean is there are three layers or three categories of services we need to look into, right? One is the business and IT fusion. What does it mean is it's not about just the working in a very silos ways, right? The IT and business have to converge. IT has to support the business. And again, it's a very generic term, but just look from a broader picture perspective, right? The base layer architecture, right? It's not about monolithic architecture, somebody who is from an IT background will understand more. It's not about monolithic silos, technology architecture. We have to look into the overall IT landscape or technology landscape to see how do we create the agile system landscape. It's not like, the industry is not going to operate in a waterfall way. It has to be an agile. The things are changing in such a faster way that we can't wait for 6 months or 1 year to go into the productions. It has to be a 1 month and more agile, right? The different kind of delivery model, it's a more kind of agile, not just working in a very silos way, but more in terms of how do we maximize the IT usage, right? And again, this I'm just giving more from not just from the look from a bigger picture perspective and see how does the smart meter fits into the picture, how does the data and the analytics fits into the picture. Just moving on, and again, just going into the crux of this, the topic which I chosen to talk about. One is the strategic transformation, right? So that is where I think if you start visualizing from the top to bottom, that is where you'll understand what is the main message this slide is trying to give, or the picture is trying to give, right? The first thing first, the strategy. What is the strategy utilities have? Whether, around the DR program, whether it's a AMI 1.0, and I know people are using AMI 2.0 also. What is the strategy to have AMI 2.0, right? What is the net zero goals they have, right? And again, breaking down into a short term to medium term to a long term, right? That's the strategy they need to have. The what is their vision? What is their success criteria? What is their plan? What is the innovation growth and so on and so forth? I know some of the speakers have talked about smart meter, but what is the goal we are trying to achieve? Is it a AT&C loss from the previous sir has talked about more in terms of bringing it down to 11%, 10%, but you need to have the right strategy, right time, right timeline. And then you start looking into, do I have the right business model to support that kind of strategy, right? Whether I have the right cost structure, whether I have the right revenue structure, I have the right partners in place, right? You can't go in a very transactional way. It has to be very strategic way, right? Whether I have the right value prop, whether I have the right key activities, resources, and so on and so forth, right? And if you don't have the right business model, you really need to see what are the changes required in the business model. And going to the bottom one, that is where the operating model comes into the picture. You can't be operating the way you used to operate. It can't be one size fits all, right? So you need to look into your, the technology, the people, the process, the governance, and see what kind of roadmap I want to have to support my business model, which in turn support my strategy. That is the bigger, the broader picture. For example, if I look at the DER programs, like demand response program, am I getting the right ROI? May not be. So what I need to do is basically I need to understand what customer segments I need to have, where I need to target those DR programs, right? So all those things, you start looking from a bigger picture perspective. When I'm getting the smart meter data, what kind of insights I want? How do I manage the supply and demand in a much more effective way, right? That is the thought process and visualization is required when I look at from a strategic transformation perspective. And again, when I build on a strategic transformation, right, we need to look into the framework. And I always say there are 3 different categories. One is your digital customer experience, right? As a customer, right, I'm expecting a lot, right? I cannot just accept what utilities are providing. I accept a lot, right? I want this, right? So it's all about digital customer experience. And they need to gear it up. Maybe currently I do not have an option, but in the future I'll have an option, right? So customer experience is going to matter a lot. So what are the programs I want to run in the customer experience space, right? Looking into the data coming from the smart meter. The digital workforce management, right? Which is where I think I need to enable my digital workforce with the right tools and technology when they are going and doing the work in the field, right? Whether it's a meter deployment, whether it's a meter diagnostic, right? I need to give them the right tools and technology. The third one is the asset management. As I said, utilities are an asset-heavy industry. How do I maximize the asset, the life cycle? And then bottom, if you go down below, it's all about the operating model. As I said, if I relate this with the previous message I wanted to give. And the right bottom is the enterprise architecture. And again, somebody coming from IT background will understand a little bit more on what I mean to say when I talk about the enterprise architecture. So what the key message I wanted to give is you need to have an enterprise architecture as a strategy to drive the transformation. And what does it mean is, if you look at the top portion, that is where you need to identify what are the goals and visions I have, right? What are the objectives I have? Whether it's energy technology consumerization, whether it's an increased impact of environmental concerns, whether it's electrification of transportation, supply chain resilience, decarbonization, energy transition, data-driven upstream. And that is where you need to look into, do I have the right enterprise architecture in place? When I say enterprise architecture in place, do I have the right tools, technology in place? Do I have the right process in place, SOP in place? Do I have the right people in place, right? If not, then what kind of roadmap I need to have to transition from where we are in terms of the people, process, technology, the governance, to the model where I need to have to support those strategic goals. And these are the top-level strategic goals, whether it's a smart meter, what I'm trying to achieve. Do I have the right process in place? Do I have the right technology in place? Whether we talk about RF, whether we talk about GPRS, right? We need to understand, we need to look into the bigger picture perspective. Because when I talk to many of these service providers, they say we want 100% RF, right? Is that the right choice? Don't go with just, what market is saying. We need to understand what is the right technology. Whether it's a meter data management system, what is the right meter data management system? What is the right hidden systems, right? What is the billing systems? What kind of integration you want to have? So you need to start looking into that bigger picture, starting from the strategic goals to the enterprise architecture, and understand, where do I stand? Am I at the right place? If not, then what kind of roadmap I want? I cannot have everything to be transformed in next 2-3 years, right? I need to have some small baby step to move in a direction which supports my long-term strategy goals, right? And again, I'll close this with some of the key messages. Again, time is running out, and I know I'll be happy to have more conversations. And we have as an L&T, we are doing tons of AMI work in India and across India. Also, we are doing a lot of work in the transmission space also. That's one of the focus area, and I'm happy to go into the details in the smart meter or any other details. But the key message I wanted to give, right, the change, right? So the change is happening, right? The expectations are changing very fast, right? We can't operate in a waterfall, 6 months, 1 year kind of timeline. The things are changing very fast. Think digital, right? So we need to think about the overall customer journey, the overall business process. When a customer signs up, when a customers with my service provider, what kind of journey they want, and when they are going off from me, whether it's a customer acquisition, customer retention, I need to have the right, so I need to think about the digital way, right? The experience is not about digitally, not just about the customer experience. Let's understand this. Digital is just a technology, but how it creates to give you a seamless customer experience, that is what it matters, right? We need to look into an integrated approach. The operating model, which we are embarking, and I think we start looking into the operating model in more details, and then the strategy and the architecture. The new techniques, right, may be required. There are more customer culture. And then measure, right? You can't just keep doing if you're not getting the right ROI. As sir was talking about 11%, 10.5%, measure. Am I taking the right step? This is what I wanted to achieve, right? So keep measuring your success criteria. Keep measuring your goals, visions. Am I going in the right direction? I know not just in India, if you look at across the globe, the utilities as overall industry is kind of, I may be using a wrong term, but it's a bleeding in the sense is they are being disrupted. Not just the individual customers who are becoming the prosumers, but also the non-utilities player, whether Google, Tesla of the world, also coming and trying to disrupt the market. The builders are becoming and giving the solar panel, right? So how do I get into that space and move away from a commodity business, which is just electricity and water and gas, to a service-based industry? It's all about service. Can utilities become a Uber of the world? Not just supplying the electricity, gas, and water, but I can supply the mobile, the broadband also. I can supply the internet connection also. I can supply the landline also. I can also look into if customers are interested in buying and upgrading their devices, appliances, and I can give it a better wholesale price. So can they become an Uber of the world, right? That is the way the utilities start looking from a long-term vision. So I'll close this, as Neha was talking about. I have a book which is there on Amazon, which talks about more in the sense is the digital era and the reinvention. If somebody interested, it's there on the Kindle and Amazon also. Please, you can always read that, and I'll happy to have more conversation. I know it's too fast because I've been given 15 minutes, which is way less, but I'll be happy to have any other conversation, deep dive. Thank you so much for listening.